Hello everyone. I've got noon, so I think we should get started and make sure we have time enough to get through our large amount of content today. I'd like to welcome you all to the latest in the New Bio webinar series. My name is Sarah Wurzbacher. I am an extension educator for Penn State University, and I work for the New Bio Consortium. That consortium is a federally funded program that promotes the use of biomass energy in the northeastern United States. We have a number of federal, private, and public affiliates that we work with in reaching those goals. And some of them we are joined by today to speak about opportunities for the Biomass Crop Assistance Program in this region. Today our speakers are Virginia Green from the USDA Farm Services Agency, Sarah Boggess from ReEnergy Holdings, Nathan Sleight from SUNY-ESF Willow Project, and John Griswold from Aloterra Energy. Both ReEnergy and Aloterra are participants in the BCAP program and have recently received new funding to enlist new lands into the plantings of willow in the case of ReEnergy in New York, and giant miscanthus in the case of Aloterra in northeastern Ohio and northwestern Pennsylvania. Each of those speakers will give a little bit more of an introduction for themselves and talk a lot more about BCAP in general and their operations more specifically as we go through the program today. But I wanted to let you know who's going to be speaking to you today. Our first speaker today will be Virginia Green from USDA. She'll be speaking about BCAP in general and talk a little bit more specifically about the opportunities in New York. So Virginia, we'll let you take it away here. And please go ahead.
I'm Virginia Green. I'm the Conservation Specialist for the New York State Farm Service Agency. Our state office is in Syracuse. So I'm going to talk about the New York BCAP project area. So our project sponsor is ReEnergy Holdings, LLC, and we have two main facilities for ReEnergy. We'll go to the Lionsdale facility and Black River, which is at Fort Drum. So our energy crop is Shrub Willow. And just to talk about what BCAP is, BCAP project areas are authorized to establish distinct geographic areas in which participants can enroll land into BCAP contracts and use eligible crops. The purpose of BCAP is to support the establishment and production of eligible crops for the conversion to bioenergy. For New York, this is the region. There's 9 counties that are eligible for BCAP contracts in our project area. This lists the counties: Clinton, Essex, Franklin, Herkimer, Jefferson, Lewis, Oneida, Oswego, and St. Lawrence counties. The sign-up started on August 17th, so we have a very short window of time this year to sign up eligible farms. We have to have our contract approved by September 25th. The project area for our willow is going to expand the acreage to 2,500 acres. We currently have about 1,250 acres enrolled under the 2012 version of our BCAP project area. Again, 1,250 acres. It'll be an 11-year contract with annual payments. The effective date of the contract is the first day after the month after county committee approval. So since these contracts have to be approved in September, then they will be effective October 1st, 2015, unless the producer decides that they want to defer and start their contract 6 months from now. That is an option that they have. For producer eligibility, the main eligibility for a producer is that they do need to certify to conservation compliance, which is the highly erodible and wetland provisions of the 1985 Food Security Act. And for FSA, we would be asking them to complete a form that will show us the members of the entity, if it is actually an entity that is enrolling in the program. BCAP, in some cases, as we work through the provisions of the program, are very similar to the Conservation Reserve Program. However, there are some differences. Foreign producers are eligible to participate in the program. There are no adjusted gross income provisions for BCAP. There are no payment limitations. So one producer can enroll as many acres as they want to and receive cost share and annual payments for as many dollars as acreage that they enroll. So there is no limit. We do not have a minimum acreage requirement, but I think that when ReEnergy talks about the delivery production agreements, we have some criteria there. Conservation Reserve Program requires cropping history in many cases for the land to be enrolled in the program. That is not the case for BCAP. Any eligible land can be enrolled. It doesn't matter what was planted on the land. And there are no conflicts with other USDA programs that FSA and NRCS may administer, such as CSP, EQIP, or Farm Programs, ARC PLC program. Eligible land that meets the definition of cropland is eligible. This would be land that is tilled or has been tilled in the past. Pasture land is eligible. If we have any land that was already established as Shrub Willow that meets the NRCS standards that they have put together for a Shrub Willow contract, I don't think we have any of that in that region because what we did have was enrolled last time in 2012. Rental rate calculations. If we're enrolling cropland, it's going to be a per acre annual rental payment, and we'd be determining that based on the 3 predominant soils. FSA has rental rates for all soils that NRCS has in their Surgo layer. So we would do a weighted average of those 3 predominant soils, and then that would be the base rental rate. Pasture land, again for CRP, we have what we call a marginal pasture land rate. If we're enrolling pasture land into BCAP, we would be using that rate. And again, if we had any already established, we would be using those 3 predominant. Regardless of what type of land that is added or enrolled in the program, we would be adding an additional 25% incentive to that weighted average. This chart, and I'm not going to read through it, but this shows the rates of rental rates for the 9 counties that are eligible for the program. So basically, on the crop side, it ranges from just over $30 to, in the case of Lewis County, $71 an acre. So there is some discrepancy, or differences, I should say. Ineligible land that's currently enrolled in the Conservation Reserve Program, the Wetland Reserve Program, or the Grassland Reserve Program are not eligible unless that land is expiring. The contract is expiring on 10/1 of 2015. If that were the case, then the land could be offered into BCAP. Native sod is not eligible, but according to the definition that we have at USDA, New York does not have native sod. And then land by federal, state, or local governments is not eligible for the program. Annual payments. 1/2 of the calculated first-year annual payment can be issued as soon as the contract is approved, if that's what the farmer would like. And this, by doing this, it allows some upfront money to be used as they start their practice work this fall, moving into next spring planting. The remaining 1/2 and then all other subsequent annual payments will be paid after the anniversary date of the contract. That's normally after October 1st. In the year that the willow is harvested, there is a payment reduction. And because of the value that is the willow, annual payment for our BCAP would be zero. There would be no annual payment in that year. That varies between the different project areas, I believe. But in our case, it does calculate out to zero because of the value of the willow that is harvested. Crop establishment, it's 50% cost share up to $500 per acre. If the is a part of a socially disadvantaged group, then that cost share goes up to $750 per acre. Establishment practices started or implemented before they submit the application for a contract. We cannot reimburse them for that. Partial payments are authorized. A difference from the 2012 program, cost share payments cannot be assigned as they were, like I said, done in the 2012 program. So we have to make the payment to the farmer who expends the cost, and then if he has outstanding bills for for planting or the material, the willow, and what have you, he would have to pay that. We would not pay that for them through an assignment process as we did in 2012. Plant 5,500 stems per acre, and this just goes over the spacing, and I'm pretty sure that Nate will also be talking about that. Our areas that within the field boundary that are not planted, turn rows and things like that, but we will include all of that acreage in the contract. So even though there's not willow planted on the entire acreage because of the spacing and the end rows or turn rows, it will still be part of the contract, and they will get an annual payment on that acreage. So items that the actual material, cover crop after a burn down, if that is part of the conservation plan. If there's obstruction rocks that need to be removed, we can cost share that. Cover establishment in the traffic lanes and ends of the rows. So the conservation plan will require grass cover on that, and that those costs are also cost shareable. Coppicing of the 1-year growth. So if they plant next spring, the coppicing that will be done the following year in 2017, we would be able to cost share that. And then that are needed to get the stand established is cost shareable. All that will be detailed in their NRCS conservation plan.
Virginia.
Items that are not cost shareable. Once the stand is established, and if there are any need for weed control or fertilizer or what have you, once the stand is established, that is at the expense of the contract holder. The harvest, storing, and transporting of the material to the biomass conversion facility is not cost shareable. And the practices or components for anything that was already established are not cost shareable. Other practice requirements, the planting needs to be completed within 12 months of the effective date of the contract. County committee at the local level can waive that, and in some cases we will be doing that because I believe we want to stagger the plantings. If we get the 1,200 acres that we're looking for, we would want to stagger that over 2016 and 2017 planting. So that option is available. It is the responsibility of the landowner to control any other weeds, undesirable plants, etc., that may come into the cover or the practice. And then maintenance and harvest must be done outside of the primary nesting season. New York's primary nesting season for our Conservation Reserve Program is April 1st through August 1st. And so we will not be able to do any of the maintenance or harvest work. Now, this is only applicable once the crop is established. So again, if we're planting in 2016, whatever needs to be done after planting during that window of April 1st to August 1st, that is permissible. It's once the crop is established, then we have to be sure that we're not disturbing the nesting birds in that time frame that could potentially be in our project acreage. NRCS will develop conservation plans for the farmers. FSA and NRCS have agreed that we will use an interim conservation plan due to the short window for contract approval. And it's just a one-page document, and in that document they will be certifying that they will be working with NRCS to get a conservation plan by the middle of December. And NRCS will also provide what we call an LTP form, and that will have the planting provisions. NRCS is currently working with SUNY-ESF and the Willow team to be sure that those planting provisions meet the recommendations of ESF, since they are our lead on this project. The next three slides just show the county office contact information for the 9-county region that is eligible for the BCAP program. And lastly, on the last slide is also my phone number at the state office.
Thank you so much, Virginia. If you have questions for Virginia, feel free to type them in the chat pod, but we'll save them for the end. In the meantime, we're going to switch over and hear from Sarah and Nathan, who will talk more specifically about willow management in general and ReEnergy specifically.
Good afternoon. This is Sarah Boggess. ReEnergy Holdings owns and operates facilities that use forest-derived woody biomass and other wood waste residues to produce renewable energy. We also own facilities that recycle construction and demolition material. We operate in 5 states, employ approximately 300 people, and we own and operate 8 energy production facilities with the combined capacity to generate about 300 megawatts of renewable energy. Our generating facilities are in New York, Maine, and Connecticut. Our recycling facilities are in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. So this slide drills down a bit into our footprint in New York State. Our corporate headquarters is in New York State, along with 3 of our energy generating facilities. We have about 80 employees in New York and 103 megawatts of installed capacity. At those facilities, we make about $24 million in annual fuel purchases. A rule of thumb in the biomass power sector is that every 1 megawatt of installed capacity creates between 3 and 7 jobs, 1 in the facility and the rest as spin-off jobs, most of them harvesting fuel. Our energy facilities in New York are all in the North Country, which allows us to utilize the rich natural resources of this region. Our Black River facility is located inside the fence at Fort Drum, a U.S. Army installation that is the largest single-site employer in New York State, with more than 17,000 soldiers and more than 18,000 family members. The Black River facility was an idled coal-burning facility that ReEnergy acquired in 2011 and invested more than $34 million to convert the facility to use biomass as its primary fuel. The Black River facility employs about 33 people but supports almost 150 forest-related jobs in the local region. Our Ryonsdale facility in Lewis County employs 22 people and supports another 100-plus jobs indirectly. Our Chateauguay facility in Franklin County is idled at this time due to market conditions, but we're investigating options to repower that facility. Most of the shrub willow in the existing BCAP program is sent to our Black River facility at Fort Drum, which uses about 500,000 tons of green wood per year. Fuel diversity is important to us, and we're pleased to be a partner in the Shrub Willow project for many reasons. Through our collaboration with ESF and the agricultural community, we get the benefit of broadening the availability of additional renewable fuels, while also creating jobs and improving the regional economy by supporting local farmers and landowners. We appreciate that the USDA is helping us support a more sustainable, energy-independent, and environmentally sound future for central and northern New York. One thing I want to note about our Black River facility is that last September, The U.S. government awarded a 20-year contract to that facility, and under the terms of this renewable energy supply agreement, the ReEnergy Black River facility is providing secure renewable electricity to Fort Drum. The facility is providing all of Fort Drum's electricity needs, which currently peaks at about 28 megawatts. And this partnership makes Fort Drum and the community more resilient, allowing for an uninterruptible power supply if the grid is not available due to natural or man-made events. So it's an honor for us to be able to assist the U.S. Army in meeting its ambitious renewable energy goals and to support the soldiers and civilians of the 10th Mountain Division. And this agreement places Fort Drum at the forefront of military installations in the U.S., and I think it's pretty neat that this USDA-supported Shrub Willow project is playing a role in that national security project. Our existing BCAP project involves the planting of shrub willow on marginal farmland in central and northern New York, and the active counties at this point are Jefferson, Lewis, and Oneida counties. We purchased the harvested willow and use the biomass to produce energy at our energy generating facilities, and the Black River facility is accepting approximately 80% of the fuel. Over the 11-year life of this phase 1 of the project, it's expected that 150,000 green tons of biomass shrub willow will be produced and used in our facilities. The willow, which can be harvested every 3 years, will have the potential to continue producing fuel for us for at least another decade after the program is completed. A couple of other things I'd like to note about our fuel procurement program is our innovative chipper program, in which we acquire and lease state-of-the-art wood chippers to our fuel suppliers in New York. And also, with respect to our fuel supply, we've achieved certification to the Sustainable Forestry Initiative standard back in 2013, and this verifies that our biomass procurement program promotes land stewardship and responsible forestry practices. And ReEnergy is the first company solely devoted to electricity production to be certified to that standard. In the first round of the BCAP program, we signed contracts with landowners in fall of 2012. There were some plantings already in place, so we did begin to see some tonnage in 2013 and 2014, more than 3,100 tons at our 2 operating facilities. So far this year, we've seen about 1,200 tons, with additional tonnage expected. We found that willow is suitable as a fuel, and we've worked through trial and error to determine the best blending techniques to optimize fuel performance. We anticipate, once the program kicks into high gear, that we will produce almost 9,000 tons of feedstock annually. But we've been allotted BCAP funds to grow the program, and in Phase 2, we anticipate a doubling of the acreage and throughput. And I'll turn things over to Nathan now.
Hello, this is Nathan Sleight. I'm a master's student and research project assistant at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. So I'm going to talk about the willow specifically and the biology of it. So just to give a general overview here, we have what the biomass industry looks like in general as a part of the energy mix in the United States and the world. And biomass energy takes up about half of what renewable energy is, and what we're trying to look at is expanding it. So by using dedicated energy crops like willow, we can predict that we can have 600 million dry tons per year in the U.S. Sorry, okay. So when we're talking about willow bioenergy crops, we're not talking about tree weeping willows. We're talking about multi-stem shrubs planted at high density like a field crop. So each plant has numerous stems that can come up from the base, as you can see in the picture to the left. We at ESF have been researching this for a few decades now, from all sorts of angles, looking at cropping methods, breeding, yield, economics, pest management practices, in order to develop the goal of commercialization. We don't want this to be a research project. We want it to be deployed out in the landscape. So that's what the BCAP is hoping to do. So why willow? Well, willow has a number of unique plant characteristics that make it ideal for an energy crop. It's easy to propagate. It's extremely fast growing. It regrows and resprouts multiple times. It has limited pests and diseases, and it's compatible with conventional agricultural practices. So we're looking at yields of about 4 to 5 dry tons per acre per year, or 8 to 10 wet tons per acre per year. In central and northern New York, we currently have about 1,200 acres in the ground, and since we grow them on 3-year rotations, that means about 300 to 400 acres per year are harvested. So that, as Sarah already mentioned, is going into the ReEnergy Facilities, and it's being mixed with the forest residues to create renewable electricity. Here's a map of where the willow is currently being grown in New York. As you can see, it is being clustered around where the biopower facilities are. We don't want to have a large transport distance for it because that would increase the costs. Here's our schematic developed at ESF about the willow crop production cycle. As you can see, it's compatible with conventional farming practices. So at the beginning, as you see in the blue here, that stuff is done once in the establishment year, or what we call year 0. The fields are prepared, plowed in discs, and then they're planted with these specialized planters. I'll have more on that on the next slide. And they're let grow for 1 year, and then coppiced or cut back at the base. And that promotes rigorous resprouting of multiple stems, so you'll have more stems after the coppice than previously. You do not harvest the coppice plantation. That's just a 1-year growth to get it established. But then once you do that once, it'll has minimal maintenance from then on, and after 3 years you can harvest it. And then that can be maintained without replanting for, we approximate, about 7 crop cycles. And then at the end of each of those crop cycles, you have about 15 dry tons per acre for each harvest, or that works out to about 5 dry tons per acre per year. So here's more about the planting. We have specialized planters that cut large willow stems, what we call whips, as you can see in the picture to the right, and then they drop about 10-inch cuttings into the ground. So it's just a stick. It's very easy to propagate, and the willow has the biological capability to grow from that. The equipment for these planting services are available from Celtic Energy and AA Willow. Those are 2 project partners with the ESF. And the planting stock itself can be secured from AA Willow. They're located in the Fredonia area of New York, and so they grow these willow whips that can be used for the planting stock. And you have to order in advance for the spring planting. Here's a nice picture of what ideal willow field will look like after it's planted. You want to achieve a 75% survival rate in order for it to work out well. And so this is the start and the establishment, and then after 3 years, it'll look hopefully like this here. So you can see they grow up to be about 25 feet tall or so. So ESF has done a lot of work with harvesting operations for it. So New Holland, New Holland has been a good project partner with us, and they've developed a specialized header that fits on their harvesters. So that's specialized in order to cut willow biomass. You can see in the picture at the bottom. It's reduced harvesting costs significantly, and now there are 2 of these available for rental in New York State, or of course you could purchase your own. ESF has also developed what we call EcoWillow 2.0 as a cash flow model in order to estimate what the economics will be for producing willow biomass crops. There's a lot to it here, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we have several cases that we go through. And so the first is the base case production. So this is just what a farmer could achieve on his own, not looking at BCAP, just a very conservative estimate here. And so that has a break-even scenario and a long payback time. But if you include the BCAP incentives, then it has greatly increases the economic profitability of the willow system, and 10-year payback, which would correspond to what would be after the 3rd harvest, and all in cost of doing $25 a ton. You can see on the right there cash flow output from the EcoWillow model. We also look at, say we have best management practices, and what higher yields or higher practices that we can expect in this improved case. So combining that with the BCAP incentives reduces the amount of time to pay back first to 7 years or after the second harvest, and reduces costs from $25 a ton to $20 a ton. You can look a lot more about the Eco-Willow model on our website. So in addition to energy, Willow also has multiple environmental benefits, being a renewable energy crop. This here is a map created by another graduate student here at ESF looking at a potential supply area for the willow in the for the Black River facility. And again, a lot of detail here, but the main takeaway point is that there is a lot of land. We're not short for land. There's multiple thousand acres available that could be used for willow biomass crops. We at ESF also have extension services, so please contact us if you want to do this or want more information about willow biomass crops. You don't need to do it all alone. We offer technical assistance and crop monitoring and help you secure equipment and land assessments. So the contact information is on the next slide, actually. But in summary, we have willow biomass as a potentially good source of biomass crops, and we have years of research here at ESF. Economic returns can be estimated through Eco-Willow and can be enhanced through the BCAP program. We have 1,200 acres or so already established, and as already mentioned, we're looking to increase that. Secure market through the contracts of ReEnergy, and we're really looking for have the BCAP incentives, and they're only available for a limited time, so we want to take the opportunity of that as we have it. Here's contact information. The project partners, Celtic Energy and AA Willow, are at the bottom there, and then my colleague Justin Heavey, his address is up at the top right there.
And if there are questions about agronomics of willow, Nathan would be happy to answer those. Please type them into the chat pod. And any other questions you have about ReEnergy and their agreements with BCAP can also be typed into the chat pod. At this time, we're going to switch over, and we're going to hear from John Griswold, who works for Aloterra Energy, a miscanthus producer based in northeastern Ohio. So at this time, John, we'll let you take it away. So John, I think you need to unmute your microphone. Hang on just 1 second. There we go.
Does that have it?
Yep, you got
Yes.
it. Take it away, John.
Sorry, everyone. I am very happy to be here today to discuss what we at Aloterra are doing over in Northeast Ohio and northwestern Pennsylvania. We are growing miscanthus. It is a perennial grass, non-invasive, and it's been around the world for quite some time, and Europe's been growing it for 30 plus years and simply burning it. We have chosen to take some other things and do with this crop, but it is non-invasive. It is a perennial. It grows on real marginal soils, and our yields per acre are somewhere between 8 and 12 tons. We haven't run into any pests or diseases of any significance, and it is very, very low inputs to raise. Over the last few years, we've learned that baling it in this part of the country doesn't work real well because our soils are so wet during the late fall and winter. So we've chosen to go to a chopper. We're using cloth choppers. We've had to put the chopper on tracks, the silage wagon on tracks, and the tractor pulling the wagon on tracks just to get through the fields. But this year we've been pretty successful, and we're going to make some more modifications. Harvest up until this last year has been a little difficult for us. We are storing the product in silage bags, either along the field or in centralized locations. And to give you an idea of the value of Miscanthus, I put a chart here. On the right side, you'll see this came from Ohio State Extension Office last year, and it was at a CAUV tax discussion, and it was apparent that for the area we are in, the return for an acre of corn is about $162 and change per acre. And what I put here on the left side of this chart is that if you get 8 tons to the acre for Miscanthus, you probably have a net return per acre of about $160, and 10 tons would yield you about 200. So the point is that Miscanthus is beginning to equal corn at current corn values. If it goes back to $7 or $8 per bushel for corn, this won't hold. But for now, over the next few years, looks like this is going to be a fair evaluation. Some of the things we've done since we were granted the BCAP a few years back is we pushed real hard to get crop insurance, and we do have crop insurance available. It's a little cumbersome to figure out, but it is available. And what that's doing for us, we think in the long run, will put Miscanthus on an equal footing with corn and soybeans, that a producer can go out and get credit to plant and to harvest, much like they do corn and soybeans today. I wanted to talk a little bit about the uses of Miscanthus, and this seems to always be a real question mark for a lot of people, and admittedly we haven't been out there advertising what we're doing with Miscanthus until today in the last few weeks. But we are using Miscanthus in 3 separate areas. One is absorption, one is we're using it for its fiber, and lastly we will be using it for its cellular makeup. And so I put this slide up on water absorption just to show you how significant Miscanthus is. On the right side there, if you were absorbing water and you had 5 tons of water, you would only need 1 ton of Miscanthus to absorb it. You can see Miscanthus is way above corn cobs and sawdust and wood pellets, fly ash and lime. And that's very significant when it comes to the oil and gas drilling business. They generate a lot of water that needs to be solidified. In the lower part of this chart, I showed you the oil absorption, which is even more significant versus some other products. And the combination of its ability to absorb oil and to absorb water, we found a very strong demand out of the natural gas industry and landfills. And in Pennsylvania, there's an intention of using Miscanthus to absorb oil and then burn it in some of those incinerators that Pennsylvania has. The second thing is packaging. What we found is that the fiber in Miscanthus is very similar to a hardwood tree, and therefore we have built a facility in Ashtabula to handle Miscanthus. We are first converting it to a pulp, then converting it into the packages you see in the picture. A chipotle bowl there on the left, and a clamshell and a typical bowl. But the interesting thing is nowhere in this country is packaging being made from non-wood product. All of the non-wood packaging that you see, actually for the most part, comes in from China. And our customers that we've located like the sustainability, the high durability of our product, the fact that it's a non-tree fiber is really a marketing ploy for our end customer. People love the fact that it's a U.S. farmer grown and it's helping the rural community, and it is price competitive. We are price competitive with China, which is very significant. It indicates, or it should indicate, that we are bringing real value to the U.S. economy. This is a picture of our packaging facility in Ashtabula. Those are clamshells, pretty obviously, and we'll have a video where you can see this equipment run. We've got about $12 million invested in this facility, and not oddly, but a key fact is that all of these are sold already. The entire year's production of about 55 million pieces have already been sold and spoken for. So this plant is, all it has to do is run. The third thing is somewhat of the future, just a few years out, and that's the cellular makeup of Miscanthus. Inside all living plants, there is a crystal, and it's a crystal that provides strength to the plant, and it's called nanocrystals. And there are many researchers working on nanocrystals, cellulosic nanocrystals, and the value they would bring to this country. We are partnered with Case Western University in Cleveland, the School of Engineering, to develop CNCs, these nanocrystals from Miscanthus. And we have patents on it, and this is where we think the business will be heading in the next year or so. And here's the interesting thing about CNCs. They're always used for a mechanical enhancement of some sort, either for films or they're used to increase the velocity, but it's always increasing the durability. And if you look in the third column, the elastic modulus, if you look down there, cellulosic nanocrystals are 150. That means that it is stronger than the Kevlar just above it. So the nanocrystals from Miscanthus, as well as any nanocrystals, it's stronger than Kevlar, almost as strong as carbon fibers, and steel wire is the strongest. However, when you look just a couple columns over, you can see that the specific modulus, or its stiffness versus its mass, CNCs have a value just short of carbon fibers, and carbon fibers are very difficult and environmentally a real problem to make. And here's the thing about Miscanthus CNCs, is the aspect ratio of Miscanthus has been found to be bigger than all of the other items I've listed here. And this aspect ratio is what imparts the strength and increases the viscosity effects. And when you think about all of the things in this world that want to be made stronger yet lighter, the CNCs from Miscanthus fill those bills, and it fills it from a commercially viable solution. You just can't cut down as many trees as we can cut down Miscanthus year over year. This is a short chart, and it talks about the value of CNCs in the future, and it's the second paragraph on the right there. The projections are that this market will be $250 million in North America by the year 2020. There's just so many potential uses, from paint to diapers to almost anything. This is our project area. We run into Pennsylvania as far as Route 79, and we are close to Cleveland on the east side. We have the same sign-up deadline of the 25th. We have a 5-year minimum contract with Miscanthus. Our lease payments for ground is anywhere from $40 to $100. It depends on the size and the quality of the ground. You can reach me at this email address, and you can certainly find out a lot more about Miscanthus and what we're doing with it on our website. And summary, looks like I'm almost on time. Miscanthus, non-invasive, can be used on marginal ground. It is a valuable crop. We are trying to make it acceptable as a mainstream crop. We have established markets, which we are going to today, and we have future markets that we have in front of us. With that, I will close.
Thank you very much to all of our speakers. We really covered a lot of ground today. We have a lot of questions to get through. Since John, you just spoke, I'll start in for some of the questions for you while it's fresh. There have been some questions about Miscanthus in general. So could you first maybe talk a little bit about the crop in general, what it is, what variety we're talking about? One of our participants was surprised to see that the USDA was supporting Miscanthus with crop insurance. That seems to be something new to our participants. Could you talk a little bit about why that has happened, how recently that has happened, and what it has to do with the BCAP program in general?
Well, it was done separately from BCAP. It is our own people working with various governmental groups to generate the insurance, and I don't think I can speak to exactly how we accomplished it, but we have met with the right people, the right organizations, to get it qualified for this insurance. That's if you send me an email, I'll get you in touch with our legal department, and they'll figure it out for you.
That's a generous offer. But it is nice to see that crop insurance is available for this crop. Paul follows up with a question. Is it just Aloterra's Miscanthus in that area of land being grown that is eligible for crop insurance, or is that a nationwide availability?
As far as I know, it's nationwide. This is a government insurance deal.
Excellent. Thank you. There were a few other questions about the use of, you mentioned the use of absorption qualities of Miscanthus for oil and gas effluent, but another question that people had was about animal bedding. So that animal bedding has been one of the featured markets for perennial grass crops anywhere in the U.S. Mm-hmm. Can you speak a little bit about the availability of Miscanthus for commercial uses for animal bedding? Is there an estimated date for that to be rolled out? Is that an interest of Aloterra's?
It was of interest to us early on, but what you find missing there is a long-term demand that you can contract and generate year-over-year demand for. Your competing products are priced quite low. Straw, peanut hulls, soybean hulls, and therefore we didn't think it was sustainable for for our farmers that we would tie them down to something that didn't generate as much income as possible for them.
All right, thanks. So there was a question about land enrollment for Aloterra. Let me scroll through and find it specifically here. So there's a question about, let's see. So the way that the contracts would work for land enrollment under the BCAP program in association with Aloterra. Does Aloterra have a BCAP contract in itself, or do you work with landowners to obtain their own contracts in association with Aloterra? Can you clarify how that would work for land enrollment?
The contract is with Aloterra, and we take that lease contract to the FSA office, and they approve it, and they approve the ground and the contract. I don't quite understand the rest of that question, I guess.
So is the landowner setting up his or her own individual BCAP contract, or is it a contract with you and then Aloterra is under the larger umbrella of BCAP? Would the landowner themselves have an independent BCAP eligibility?
Yes, they can sign up as a producer. And that is a contract directly with the FSA office, not with us.
All right, would they work with you to go down that road, or would they just need to go directly to the FSA office then?
No, they would work with us. We would take them there saying, these guys, we want to work with this producer, and please accept them, you know. We'll have to plant the acres. Our producers do not plant. They don't have the equipment.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. There was one other question on Miscanthus and Aloterra that was already written. I was asking about, can you talk a little bit about the species of Miscanthus you're using, why that has been accepted, and why, talk about why it's a non-invasive crop when many other types of Miscanthus are considered invasive.
Okay, that's a good question. Miscanthus we use is Illinois clone. It's been designated as, it's actually a University of Illinois clone that seems to have a path that we can follow and market it as an Illinois clone. There's a couple other varieties out there, but we've chosen to take the more general line and allow all of our producers to have the same status as far as species goes. And it does grow well up here. This Miscanthus Giganteus is a triploid. It has, it is like a mule. It cannot produce seeds, so therefore it's sterile, and there are no seeds to blow around or to move around. And we have the Ohio Seed Association come out every year, and they bag it does produce a little tassel. It's a variety of corn. Not a variety of corn, but it comes from the corn family, grass family. And the tassel has no seeds, and the Ohio Seed Association verifies that we are producing no seeds every year.
The last question I have for you, John, is Virginia talked about 11-year contracts. If they were to do land enrollment with you, would there be a certain length of time that they would be required to keep their land campus? Did you catch that question, John? We may have lost John's audio. So in the meantime, I'll switch to another question for Virginia. Virginia, Patrick asked earlier, what makes certain counties eligible for BCAP? Why are the certain counties that you listed and then the counties that John showed on that map limited in terms of where we can plant? Is there any kind of flexibility in terms of areas that might be outside that eligible BCAP area, or is that really set in stone?
The eligible area is set in stone, and basically the counties that are eligible were chosen by our project sponsor and his proposal to the national office back in 2012. Those were the 12 counties, or those were the 9 counties, excuse me, that were identified, and really what I believe drove it, and other people who you know, were part of that from ESF and ReEnergy could also weigh in. But basically, it's a distance to haul the material. So at the time, there were 3 facilities, you know, that ReEnergy was accepting material into, and so that was how those 9 counties were chosen. So outside of the county boundary, they're not eligible. And I would anticipate that that's the same for the Miscanthus project area as well. As far as the question that was asked about how many years they would leave it in, I would guess, based on, from an FSA perspective, if there's 5 years of annual payments, then they're going to have to keep that material on the ground for that time frame, because if they destroy that cover prior to the end of the contract period, then there would be a requirement to pay back payments that they've received and things like that. So, and that really follows other conservation programs that FSA administers.
That makes sense. So de facto, a 5-year minimum for the Willow area. John, it looks like your audio is up. Is there a minimum? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's 11 years. It's 11 years for the Willow.
11 years.
And I believe it's 5 years. Yeah, and 5 years for the other project area.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification, Virginia. So a question for Sarah and maybe John. If landowners are listening to this and they might be outside of the BCAP project area, you know, the incentives would not apply to those landowners, but could they pursue procurement agreements with ReEnergy or Aloterra? Is there a possibility for that kind of thing if they are interested in these sorts of crops in those areas?
This is John. Definitely it is. We just don't have the additional money that the BCAP provides to get things started. But longer pull, we are certain that we can show a return on investment if they wanted to get in this.
And this is Sarah. Same for us. I'd encourage interested landowners to contact us. Our contact information is on our closing slide. There may be some challenges, you know, economically for folks who would like to do that, but we'd certainly be interested in talking.
Excellent. Good to know. Do you think that maybe a couple of you could give a profile? What would an example be of a landowner that would be particularly well suited to this? They're inside the project area. They have land that meets the eligibility requirements. Is there anything about you know, characteristic of that landowner or of the land or of, you know, a really excellent candidate?
All right, well, this is John. I can tell you what we see here is it's typically an older farmer that somewhat wants to semi-retire, a farmer who doesn't want to sell his ground but wants to maintain it, a farmer that is looking to let his land be like an annuity, generate a an income for him and his wife for many years to come. Our Miscanthus is a 15, 20-year crop. And those folks are very happy. They get it right away. That's it.
Great. Yeah. Nathan or Sarah or Virginia, do you want to say anything about sort of what a perfect example of an eligible landowner interested in Willow might look like?
I guess I'll take a shot at it. Again, it's basically we're not looking at the land that is suitable for corn and soybean production. It doesn't have to be that high quality of soil and land. So it would be a person who has some marginal land, doesn't want to, plant an annual crop, and really once it's installed or established, then you're looking at breaks in time frame where you have anything that you really have to do with it. So I would say, again, probably either someone who wants to slow down, doesn't want to try to grow corn and soybeans on marginal ground, one that's looking at less annual input of production costs and
I'd like to ask our speakers if anyone has any closing thoughts, any final thoughts, anything you really want to reiterate or points you want to drive home. Feel free to jump in right now. Maybe we'll start with Virginia and go down the line. If you don't have anything to say, just pass it on to the next speaker. But we really appreciate your time, and we want to give you an opportunity to kind of give your closing thoughts here.
I think the main thing that I would like to say is, help us spread the word about both of these project areas. We recognize at USDA FSA that the time frame is really, really short, and to me that's unfortunate. And so help us spread the word of what is available, and we will be glad to work with them to get them signed up. And I have another call.
Real quickly. Okay. Perhaps you could just type in. David wants to know if there's any possibility of extension of deadline. You mentioned that there is a possible deferment period of 6 months, but you probably would have to sign some sort of commitment in the meantime before that 6 months goes up. Is that correct, Virginia?
As far as I'm aware, yeah. As far as there is not an opportunity for an extension. These are 2015, fiscal year 2015 funds, and the fiscal year ends on September 30th. So again, that's why we're doing an interim conservation plan, because we recognize there's just not time to get a producer land specific conservation plan done. But as I'm aware, there is not an opportunity for an extension.
Okay, thank you. Once again, if any of you want to type your email into the chat pod, I'll make sure that you're included on future communications about these opportunities and associated resources. Okay, moving down the line, Sarah, do you want to leave us with any final thoughts?
I'm all set. Thank you, Sarah.
Just to reiterate, we got a lot of experience in researching growing these things at ESF, so please don't hesitate to contact us if we want to get these in the ground. And we, like I said, there's only about a few weeks to sign up. So,
thanks, Nathan.
And from Aloterra's perspective, I want to communicate that this BCAP is bringing value back to rural America, that it's going to add value to the country as a whole. We are adding jobs, and that's what we're here to do. I think we've looked at our ratio, and for every dollar that's been put in by the BCAP program, we've been able to solicit $4 to $5 of private money. So it's a value, and I hope we use it.